Hello, I'm Wendy Wilson, and I'd like to welcome you to a very special edition of Realizing Potential. Today, I have with me in the studio two phenomenal leaders in this community. One is at the helm of Albany State University, and the other is a mental health counselor, well-renowned and making a huge impact throughout the state. I'll begin with President Marion Fedrick. She is the president of the largest public HBCU in the state of Georgia. And then I also have Dr. Tracy Knighton, and she is the counselor and CEO of Nova Counseling. Ladies, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure having you, and this is indeed an honor for me. We have a partnership with Nova Counseling, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But President Fedrick, let me begin by thanking you. Well, let me go back a little bit. Congratulations on the recent numbers that we are celebrating here, despite all of the circumstances and conditions beyond our control. We have high retention rate here at Albany State University, and our enrollment numbers have also gone up. So that has happened under your leadership, and very proud to be a part of that. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that is something that all of the ASU community can stand very strong and proud around for retention and growth. That's pretty phenomenal.
It is. It really is. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we're doing all of that in the middle of a global pandemic and lots of social unrest. And that's the way that we're going to open up this show, is we want to discuss how that impacts our mental health and our overall wellness. And you have been passionate and a big champion of both of those efforts since I've known you, and certainly in your role here at Albany State University as president. The chancellor tasked you with leading a task force on the state level with all the USG institutions. And so you've been doing that for well over a year, trying to make and you have been making a huge impact in that area, but you drill down. You said, I've got to take care of home. Why has that been such a priority for you here at Albany State University?
Well, thank you, Dr. Wilson. And it is a priority, and it is I think one of those priorities that you cannot overlook, you can't delay, you can't put on the shelf. When you look at just look at the environment we're in today, with social unrest, with a pandemic. We have a global pandemic, and we have people who are still trying to really work hard to make things work for others, for themselves, for their families, all in the face of what could be a very serious illness. If you have that illness, we've already seen examples of how it can be extremely, extremely dangerous, deadly even, for so many people. But when you think about our community, when you think about our students, our community is not known for seeking medical assistance when it comes to mental health illnesses. We are slow on the uptake there. There's stigmas that we really need to talk about and get on the table and get beyond, so that we do feel comfortable about seeking help for ourselves. When you look at it strictly for or from the standpoint of a CEO of an institution, mental health impacts retention. It impacts whether or not a student decides to remain in your school. It impacts just the student's general life. And so when you have those kind of things going on, I think everyone should be concerned, and we should be. And I think from the platform that I've been given, that I always have to talk about mental health because it specifically impacts our community differently than it does other communities. And there are resources that we could utilize, and we should be talking about those. And so that's why I'm so passionate about it. And I've seen it personally, how it impacts people. Not only students, but of course, faculty, staff, your community, your families. And so I am passionate about it. We'll stay that way. I don't foresee me walking away from that. Having the opportunity to be on the task force for the university system has been invaluable. And hopefully, we'll continue to pull out things from that task force that will help our university system as a whole, all 340,000 students and well over 100,000 employees, that we'll be able to help them get healthier from the wellness and the mental health space.
Sure.
It is important.
Oh, it indeed is. And that's a great segue, Dr. Knighton. The president brought up a point just in terms of, our students, or kind of alluded to that, or our students come with so much. And then now we've compounded that with this global pandemic and the social unrest. Having said that, what I've also observed about this generation, if you will, they're very open about their mental health challenges, and willing to share those conditions and seek help more so than, I'm going to tell my age, than the generation that I am. I'm 54, but we still a little reserved and hesitant. The generation that I belong to, in particularly the African American community, it is still somewhat of a taboo. That's the cousin that we, and the keep in the back room, or the uncle that we don't like to talk about. When that person or those individuals, and all of us, depending upon what's going on in our lives at that time, need a level of support. And then depending upon our condition, we may need some ongoing support, or some regular maintenance or assistance, if you will. Speak to why that is such a challenge in the African American community, that taboo that still exists as it relates to seeking mental health assistance.
Sure. And again, thank you for having me. This is one thing that I am so very passionate about, not only because I am a mental health therapist, but simply because of our history. As African Americans, we're not trusting of the medical profession to begin with. Let's start with the Tuskegee experiment. Let's even go back further as to how psychology started in the first place, the roots of psychology, and how a lot of the experiments in psychology were done on humans, and they were very inhumane. So when you look at the history of psychology, and then you look at the history of African Americans and how we're not trusting of doctors and the medical field in the first place to begin with. So that's coupled together. And now you have this fear of individuals who, I'm not going to somebody to talk about my problems because I'm not crazy. And so part of what I do as a therapist is I have to break through, number one, that first barrier, and help people understand that we are mind, body, and spirit. And so if you go to a doctor for a broken ankle, you go to a doctor for heart disease or diabetes, going to a mental health practitioner is no different. You want to go to get your ankle set correctly because you want to have full use of it. Okay. So you go to a doctor because you have diabetes, because you want to be able to live a healthy life. And so it's the same when you come to a mental health practitioner. We want to make sure that we're helping you in the best possible capacity so that you can have full use of mind, body, and spirit. So part of what I do as a therapist is I look at the whole person when they walk in the door. How are you physically? What are you bringing to me physically as my client? What are you bringing to me spiritually as my client? Because let's just face it, as African Americans, we are spirit. We love our spirit. We love our God, and we believe in our history, and we believe in everything that he's done for us. And he's an integral part of a lot of our lives. So I bring that to the table when we are looking at an individual. And I also look at the mental capacity of an individual. So a lot of times what I'm finding out is that people want to go to someone that they feel that they're going to be heard. And given where we are physically in Southwest Georgia, there's not a lot of African American therapists. So what I try to really do with my clients when they come into the office is make them, number one, feel like they're part of my family. And so if we're sitting across from each other, we're talking, we're having conversations, it may not feel like you're in a therapy session. And that's what I really, really want. And that's part of what I have to do to help clients understand that it's okay to come and get help.
Very good. Thank you so much. President Fedrick, I know you're like, we just talked about this the other day. The president and I were having a conversation about the lack of trust, and it is so justified within the African American community. We were talking about the whole, the vaccine for
COVID-19.
Thank you. COVID.
Did you really
I think because
already?
I want to forget it. Yeah, I forgot the name of it, if you can believe it. But we were talking about that the other day, and there are some institutions, some HBCUs that are stepping up to the plate and saying, yes, we want to be a part of that trial process. And so she and I were having an exchange about that. And I was just kind of venting, sharing my concerns about the point that you made, the level of distrust that is there. I need us to be, or would rather us be at the table when we are designing the vaccine and not, step in line as, being guinea pigs, if you will, because again, historically, we've seen how that's played out. And I had not even brought the trust in terms of the mental piece and why, back to that taboo question that I had. Again, because people make all kinds of judgments about you based upon the way you engage, and then your emotional and your mental state. And so we cloak that. One of the things that I have been very appreciative of in my role, particularly in light of the COVID-19 and the whole pandemic and the social unrest, is the president will periodically, whether it's one-on-one or even a group setting, she'll stop and ask, how is everybody doing? Mm-hmm. And then that it's not just the cursory ask, it is, she's genuinely concerned. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people don't get that, but that's so paramount just to our everyday existence and how we both engage. President, did you want to chime in on that piece about the whole distrust?
I think, that adds in, and it helps, and it actually harms us as well, right? Mm-hmm. So we as a community, we have to decide what we will trust and won't trust. And one of the things that I think would help is more information. As you said, if I'm not at the table helping you to design this, I don't know that I want to be on the other end. Right. You need to have me as part of the full conversation. And I think until we as a community get used to requiring ourselves to be at the table. It doesn't matter if you don't have a seat, pull you one up, let's do this, and let's get involved, because we want to be able to take advantage of everything that we can. If it helps us, let's take advantage of it. But if you're not getting the information you need, you're not going to, which means you're not going to trust. Right. And sometimes not trusting is not bad. You need to keep talking to me, give me information, convince me that this is the best thing for me. Mm-hmm. And we need to do that probably in every facet of our lives. And then there's sometimes when you kind of just take that hill and you jump, but you have to have a basis for that as well. I think the distrust also comes in the form of the stigmas. I'm not going to see the doctor because, and we have this in our community. When you look at our high blood pressure numbers, our diabetes numbers, obesity, we want to pretend we have sugar. No, it's diabetes and it will kill you. It will have you losing a limb. Right. It's not sugar. And right. Those kind of things we kind of trick ourselves into. Yes. And we die. Black people die at high rates because we don't understand the difference. And I think now as more information comes out, we realize I got to take this diabetes seriously. I can't continue to eat the red velvet cake the way I used to. Because that's a serious issue. And I think, again, it all wraps around the trust. You're absolutely right. It's around the trust and how we feel and what we're thinking, the information we have, and then how we make decisions. But we have got to take better care of ourselves.
I agree.
That most certainly involves the mental space area. I truly do want to know how people are doing. I have students who will walk up and ask me how I'm doing, and it takes me off guard every single time because I'm not expecting that. I'm really not.
It's a role reversal there for you.
They are. They're playing me really well, But and I appreciate it. Yes. Our SGA president, she will call or text, just want to check on you. I'm thinking, wow, it makes me stop every time. It makes me stop and think, you know what? You needed that text. You needed that call. Stop for a second and take care of self. And if there was one way that we can convince our community to take care of themselves, you really do have to have that time, that airspace to maybe sit back and do nothing as you're just thinking through what the next step is. And we don't take care of ourselves very well. I think we have to work on that.
We do. Now, we're in the mental space, and I know we've been giving a lot of attention to our physical being, and so what we're eating, the lack of exercise. And so we always put that in that wellness category. but what we receive emotionally and mentally. And so let's talk about the social unrest and the constant diet of information. We are in the middle of a political race like none other. My godmother checked on me today and she said, "Did you watch the debate?" And I said, "I refused to. I think I fell asleep watching Andy Griffith. I just have to, I can't." So I'm very intentional about what I receive. But a lot of people don't make that connection. And so, Dr. Knighton, will you speak to that? And then, President, if you could follow up with that as well, about how that impacts our mental state, what we receive, what we read, what we hear, social media, the
Sure.
whole onslaught.
Sure. And that's the example that I give individuals when they come to my office, particularly individuals who love their social media, who love to watch TV. One of the things I do is I put them on a diet, meaning I restrict, I restrict your access.
Okay.
Because I have to get you to control what you're bringing in. So just as you, if you're on a diabetic medication or if you're on high blood pressure, what are they going to do? They're going to give you a healthy meal plan. They're going to give you a health regimen. The same thing is true when it comes to your mental health. So I ask people, what are you watching? How much television are you watching? How much time are you spending on social media? Social media is a double-edged sword. It works good, and then there are times when it's not. And what I'm noticing about individuals is individuals who spend a lot of time watching TV, watching the news, watching all of the social unrest, watching the stats of the pandemic, they have a lot of anxiety. Well, that's because of the diet that you're taking in. That's where you're spending your time. So having people, and I call it a detox. Look, we got the detox off of this stuff. Because if we don't, what ends up happening is you can't see it physically what's happening to you because it's happening here. And if it happens here, what ends up happening is it starts to happen here. And so as we take things in here, we begin to think differently. We begin to speak differently. And as we begin to speak differently, we begin to act differently. So now I'm listening to all of this social unrest. I can't go to sleep at night. Well, not sleeping good at night, having restful sleep, how does that affect you the next morning? Well, you're late to class or you're late to work or your productivity has gone down. So it's all looking at the holistic part of individuals, looking at people as a whole body person coming in and not just dividing them out and saying, oh, I only deal with the physical part or I only deal with the mental part or I only deal with the emotional part. No, we're mind, body, and spirit, like I said earlier. So I have more millennials fight me on taking them off of social media.
I bet.
But the flip side of that is once they go on a detox, they come back and they tell me, every last millennial that has done that, they fight me tooth and nail now. Don't get me wrong. They will fight me tooth and nail. But they realize that once they've gone off the social media for a while, they start to feel differently. And that's because what you're putting in your body is very different from what you were ingesting before. Every social media, if you ever spend a long period of time on there, it's draining. It will emotionally drain you. And you think you're looking at all of this wonderful information, but if you really scroll through and pay attention to what you're looking at, you'll see that you're really not looking at information that feeds you and makes you feel better.
Sure. Yeah, you have to definitely be intentional. President, this whole year has been an absolute blur. So I'm trying to determine at one point, and it was probably the death of George Floyd, when you said, we have to respond to this. I'm concerned, Dr. Knighton, she said, for the 6,000 students or plus that we serve, the faculty and staff, and we have to do something. And I'm thinking, what can we do? What can we do? So she birthed this thought. So we now have the Centers of Diversity, Inclusion, and Social Equity. And so that's where right now our focus is on mental health. But President, what was it about of course, the horror of seeing a man die before our eyes? But it was something else that triggered you to say, we've got to do something in response. Not only to that moment and not only being a participant in making a global change, if you will, but empowering our students so that they do not stand by as just viewers to what is playing out in the world, but active participants and making sure that they protect themselves as they try to navigate and move forward. What was that point for you?
You know, I think the point probably happened years ago, to be honest, because you start feeling it and you kind of you file it away, put it on the bookshelf, you let it go, and here's something else, here's something else. I think George Floyd was that kind of final, hit on this will not stop. You know, this is not going to stop on its own. We have to do something. And I don't watch a lot of TV for the same reasons that Dr. Knighton just talked about. I'm not going to tell you which show I just stopped watching on because you would have a fit. It was my favorite show though, and there was so much violence in the show. I decided, you know what, I can't watch this. I never could figure out why. I was so agitated the day after on a TV show. We all know it's just everything staged. But when I started watching the George Floyd, I felt like I was back watching that TV show. Just the horror of watching someone beg for their life and be ignored. You can't do that to a human. And I think I started wrapping all of that up. It was really hard. You know, for me, it took me a while to even, do a statement because I looked at that thinking, what do you say to this? How can you authentically respond to this? And so, you can't explain it away. You can't explain it away. You cannot ignore it. So what is the right thing to do? Which, me, I actually think there's not enough that we can do. And so the center that I've asked you to lead, and thank you for that, our Center of Social Equity, and there's a lot that we'll be seeing coming out of that center. I also reached out to our other two public HBCU presidents, Kimberly Ballard Washington and Paul Jones at Fort Valley and Savannah State. And we spent a good amount of time on the phone. Well, what do you think we should do? What do you want to do? I think we should do this. I think we need to do that. And we kind of went at that for a little bit. And we'll be doing some more things together this coming fall and spring. Because as a community, our students in our HBCUs, they deserve a platform. They need to be heard. They need to understand how to, if this is something you want to fight for, understand and learn how to fight effectively. Marching is great, but there's always those things afterwards that need to happen. And I want them to know how to do that. George Floyd was hurtful. I think it was hurtful. It was personal. You could see any, host of people, under that same officer with their knee on his neck.
Sure.
And I think that's what the tipping point for me was. That could have been any one of my brothers, any one of our students. It kind of made me panic for a second.
Yes.
I got to get them out of harm's way. Yes. And that kind of, takes you away from the main thing. But that was, I think, just hurtful. It was hurtful. And, you kind of step back and think, again, here we are again. And I go back to the mental space. It really took me days to kind of get through and digest what just happened,
Sure.
And how did we,
Right.
and I think at some point, how did we let it happen? And I know we didn't let it happen, but that's how I felt for a while.
Right.
And so I think that was the tipping point, just realizing that could have been anybody that I knew.
Indeed.
Could have been anybody.
We'll talk a little bit more about that. We're going to take a break, but while we're transitioning, before we actually come back, if you all could start thinking about, because I'm curious to know what you all do in terms of just kind of stepping away, breathing, because you have very demanding jobs. Dr. Knighton, you kind of alluded to this earlier. There's a need for mental health practitioners and clinicians. You're a rarity, and particularly those that look like the three of us in this platform today. And so we'll talk about why that is, but what do you all do to kind of maintain your sanity and your wellness? And then we'll talk about the initiative, the collaborative initiative that we have that I'm really super excited about. But we'll come back in just a few minutes. Viewers, thank you so much for rejoining us. I'm having a very great conversation with two amazing leaders recognized throughout the state of Georgia. One is a mental health practitioner, clinician. She is Dr. Tracy Knighton of Nova Counseling, and then none other than President Marion Fedrick, who leads the Albany State University. Ladies, thank you for joining me again for this part 2 of this very timely and important discussion. Dr. Knighton, before we took a break, I was asking, why is there such a shortage of mental health clinicians, practitioners in this area? And then certainly phenomenal people like yourself who look like the three of us on this platform.
You know, I used to think it was because a lot of people just didn't want to come to the field of counseling, but I recently found out that that's not necessarily the case. I've run into a lot of individuals who have gone through the curriculum, who have graduated from our schools with the degrees, but they're so afraid of taking the test. And I'm finding out that even in my previous life as a high school counselor, just keeping them encouraged to understand that you have a master's degree in psychology, you have a master's degree in counseling. Listen, a test should not stop you from living your dream of being a therapist. And quite naturally, the tests are not designed for people of color to successfully pass them. And so it's been my goal the past 2 years that people that I know who've gone through school to help them study for this test, because it is so needed to have people that look like us to be in this field, not only in this field, but in this field getting paid. That's the thing. We can't do this work voluntarily. Our counterparts who are other persuasions, they get paid their full amounts. So that's been my push, is to make sure that if you're going to graduate with this type of degree, and if this is what you really want to do, then fulfill the full dream. And the full dream requires you to not be frightened by a test that keeps you bound. So let's do what we need to do to recruit these individuals. And I also encourage them to not stop at a bachelor level. I also encounter people that say, "Oh, I want to be a therapist." Well, it's not too much you can do with a bachelor's degree in psychology. So what does that really look like? My doctorate degree is in counseling psychology. But again, it's a doctorate degree and I'm licensed. So putting that together to help people to get into this profession, that's what we have to be crystal clear on. Because a lot of times they think, oh, I can just go get a bachelor's degree in psychology. No, there's a little bit more to that. And so just making sure that people who have this dream of being able to help in this mental space and help individuals live a fulfilling life mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, we've got to do a better job of marketing what those requirements are. And not only that, helping our students be prepared for the licensure exams that follow.
Yes. Thank you. I hadn't even thought of that. I don't know, President Fedrick, I don't know if you realized that. I didn't know what the hesitation or reservation was, but that makes perfect sense. And that happens in so many different disciplines.
So many.
Where there's a standardized test. It's almost used as a gatekeeper, if you will. Mm-hmm. And the president has talked about this on several different occasions, how it starts as early as grade 1, certainly in those middle school years, where it is intrinsic or a part of their whole system in preparing students on how to take an exam, how to study. And that is so missing in a lot of public institutions.
Right.
Not a knock, but then yes, a knock against that, because then you start talking about resources, but it starts having a ripple effect. Mm-hmm. And so here we are today, where I don't even want to know if you are the only African-American in this community, but I dare say that you probably are no? Okay.
No, it's a handful of us, but it's a small handful.
Yeah. One hand, we can use one hand. Yeah. But thank you for sharing that, President. The wheels in my head started turning. I was like, okay, now how can we get her, as if you weren't stretched enough, and start getting before our students, because that's huge. Yeah, getting the degree, and that's a big part of it. But there's a next step and the next step. And I loved your point about bringing it to full fruition, your dreams. Yes. Good deal. Thank you for that. So before we talk about the wonderful collaboration that we have going on, you will not get out of this homework assignment that I assigned you. And so I'm going to start with my boss, who I stay on quite a bit because she's so busy, Dr. Knighton, telling everybody else, did your best, you need to do this, how you feeling today? So we need to know if you're practicing what you preach. What do you do to step away from it?
This will be a good time to take a break from the show.
Did you hear that long pause?
I know.
You know what? So you know what? I will start with full transparency. I so need help in that area.
Okay.
I will step out and say, full confession, I need help with that. I drive. I am one of those type A personalities that when when it gets tough, it's let's get at it. We can make this happen. And I'm extremely blessed that I have people around me like Dr. Wilson that they make it happen. And so I know my stress gets on top of their stress. So they're stressed and I'm stressing them even more. What I am trying to be very cognizant of, especially now with so much going on, is that there are small things that I want to do. I do not want to, stay plugged in until 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, because that's the norm for me. And so that's what I'm used to. And so I've, small things I've done, like do not text after 9 o'clock, if you can at all help, unless it's an emergency, don't do it, right? I had agreed with my cabinet. I failed miserably, but at one point it was, I'm not going to text you before 8 or 9 o'clock. Probably failed on their part more than mine, but I will take the blame for it on that. But family, I have a 14-year-old, and spending time with her, playing basketball in the yard. I know people probably are getting such good chuckles out of me out there trying to play basketball with my daughter, walking with my husband, just trying to spend some of that time decompressing. And I think it's really important. And one of the things I will say is that it took me some time to really give myself permission to be able to do that. And I'm still working on that. And that's something I have to work on every day. And so I want to see, especially women, because we want to take care of the babies, take care of the husband, take care of the friends, take care of the family at home, take care of the job. We want to do all that. And we do all of that. But we should also be about us as well. And how do we take care of ourselves? So I'm still working on it. And I promise next show I will have a whole list of things that I'm doing to take care of myself. And I actually welcome people to give me some ideas on what I should be doing. I really do.
Okay, good deal. Yeah. Accountability. I'll
right.
make sure that I'll have a whole legion of people in line to help with that. Dr. Knighton, I'm curious to hear what you do. You, like the president, you have your hands in so many different things. And like the president, and that's your business, that's your life, where people come and then share and divulge and all of that. And so how do you then step away and then not absorb that, because you're human, and then you have your own life to live?
I am a water baby. I love the beach, love the beach. So every couple of months, my husband says I get an itch. He can just about tell when it's time for me to go to the beach. So I have to get away. One thing that I did implement during the pandemic, when most businesses were closed because of telemental health, I was available. We therapists around the country were available to just really start opening our doors, so to speak, and opening our computers for telemental health. So there were days where literally during the pandemic, my day would start at 8 o'clock in the morning and end at 8 o'clock at night. And I realized that I was getting overwhelmed. During that time, I was not watching TV. So I was not keeping up with the numbers on coronavirus. I was not keeping up with a lot of the social unrest that was going on. And I'll self-disclose, to this day, I have not seen the full video of George Floyd. I've not seen it. One of the conversations I was having with my husband was that I have to be really guarded.
Yes.
Because with people telling me what's going on with them and me helping guide them through their issues, I have to be ready to help. And being ready to help as a healer, we have to make sure that we guard what we take in. So that's one of the things that I did during the pandemic was I shut down and didn't watch the news. There were days when I didn't even know what was going on. And my family did a very good job of helping me shield myself from that because literally I was working 12-hour days. And as the pandemic started to end around June, July for our area, what I found myself doing was being more exhausted in those days. So what I implemented, which I still implement right now, is I don't see clients on Fridays. I take Fridays off, and that's my day to get my notes together, to get my thoughts together, to do the research I want to do, to look at different interventions and techniques that I want to use for clients, and also just to spend time with my family. My husband and I, when we were dating, we started Friday night date night. And even though we've been married 18 years later, we still do Friday night date night.
Great.
So I make sure that I'm available to them, meaning my husband and my daughter, and making sure that family gets their time. And that's what feeds me. So just really making sure that I guard my eye gates, I guard my ear gates. I'm a music person, so I love listening to music. So those things, I love scents. So I've always got candles burning and different things like that. So it's the little things that I try to do daily to take care of myself. I love hot tea, so you'll find me drinking hot tea quite often. So it's the things that I can implement on a day-to-day basis that help me versus the big things like going to the beach. Like if I could go to the beach daily, I would. But since I can't because I live in Albany, Georgia, I have to find the little things that I can do to put in my schedule during the day that helps to fuel me.
I love that. And you said so many things that I would like one person in particular to apply. That person shall remain nameless, but I have, I'm heavily involved in her calendar. And so I love where you said Friday is a don't touch day. So we're going to have to try to teach her that again. We had been doing it in spaces, like this is a protected hour, or this is a protected hour in the afternoon. And then somehow, oh no, add that to my calendar, add that to my.
Now you can start her in doses now. Start her in doses.
And
so like
maybe
2 Fridays out of the month.
I'm still here, y'all. I am still
here. Okay. Yeah, we've got to. I've got to get back on that because that is just so important. Just to sit still and breathe and collect your thoughts and plan for the next. And it's a lot. It is absolutely a lot. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to implement a few of those things. Well, as I mentioned earlier, she birthed this thought. We've got to do something in response to what's going on, making sure that our students are protected, but still equipped to navigate this world. And so then I reached out to you because, again, this is a big priority of hers, mental health and wellness. What can we do? We need your services. And you graciously availed yourself to us. And so one of the things that I'm really excited about is the Dr. T series. And so with that, Dr. T, tell us what that is going to look like.
Awesome. So I am so excited about this. I love an opportunity to engage with young people because they are so, like you said at the beginning of the show, they are so honest. Like they don't mind telling you everything. And it's so much fun. But what I've learned about this generation is they share because number one, they want help, but number two, they realize that there's so many other people who are going through the same thing. Whereas our generations, not to tell our ages, but our generation, we're more guarded. And so we don't want people to know that we're hurting secretly. This generation, they don't mind sharing. So one of the things that we're going to put in place with the Ask Dr. T is students will submit their questions to me and I will be able to answer their questions. And so these questions can be sent video and I will respond video. And we're hoping to eventually, once COVID is over, hopefully, to be able to have a space where we can do sessions together. And do roundtable sessions with students and just help them navigate life together. My whole thing when it comes to therapy is to let me help you build your toolkit because not everything deserves a hammer. So let's work on these other tools that we can begin to build your toolkit for life.
Very good. President, as you know, we opened up the door. And so our student affairs leadership reached out to the students. And I was a little, again, in that age group where I'm like, are they really going to say anything? And did they ever? Some of them we had to say, okay, we're going to put a silhouette of you up, put your question out, just for the sake of privacy. But they were very forthcoming, those that we have received thus far. And really, really great questions. They're, as the president always, they are coming with so much, just as first year students, first gens. This may have been the first time that they're away from home. I mean, it's just a mixed bag on top of a pandemic, on top of the social unrest. So it's just a lot. So we had a lot of questions about anxiety and how do I support a friend? Depression, being clinically diagnosed, a myriad of questions. And so
you forgot one, Dr. Wilson, that life balance. Okay.
Life balance. That life balance. That's right. Yeah. Speaking of the life balance, President, you said that you were giving some thought to, you wanted to expand this.
I think we should expand it.
Yeah. Share a little bit about that.
I would love for our faculty and staff to participate as well, because guess what? Everyone's probably under a similar level of anxiety. They may be, especially this far along into a pandemic and having your life changed. People may start feeling some sense of depression that they may not be able to pinpoint what it is. I'm just agitated. Okay, let's start that conversation. I would love for our faculty and staff to talk about that. And guess what? We are still in an environment where we have to be extremely careful. We have to, use our safety protocols. That brings a certain level of stress to people. And guess what? Just general life events. When you say work-life balance, we should all take that test and figure out whether or not there is truly a balance that we can strike. And I think there is. We just have to be intentional about
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Thank you. And we'll get ready to wrap up, but I have to share this story. We were at a meeting the other day with our student leadership, and beautiful young lady who was also participating. I just received the news. I have to go back. I did after this moment, this past weekend in particular, the news of the whole Breonna Taylor situation. And we're on the Zoom call, and I shared it with the president later on. I said, she looks just like Breonna Taylor.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that just a whole range of emotions. And so, as the president said earlier, we have uncles, we have husbands, we have sons. And so there could have been my child or mine. And in this particular case, my daughter had celebrated just celebrated her 24th birthday, as Breonna should have celebrated hers. And so my mind just started racing. So when I shared that with the president, because I had to depart from the call for a little bit to get myself together. Mm-hmm. And so sharing with that, she says, you need to shut down for the weekend. And I was appreciative of that. And I had to make some intentional decisions. And so again, when the TV is on now, and I don't watch a lot of it, it's either HGTV or Andy Griffith. I just can't handle reality. And I think and you all may disagree or not, what this pandemic and this whole 2020 has reminded us is that as much as people try to put capes around our neck, and we take great pride in being super women and the Black girl magic and all of that, we are still human, and it is exciting more days than not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it is I was going to write a book that said Superwoman is tired.
Say it again.
I said I was going to write this book titled Superwoman is Tired. Yeah. Because after a while, it is exhausting. And as women, we lack boundaries, and not in a negative sense, but just our nature is to nurture. And as nurturers, our boundaries are often blurred. Some of us don't have boundaries because we're always giving. And the illustration that I give to people is if I'm going to give you a candy jar, if I have a candy jar sitting on my desk and I empty the candy jar and then I hand it to you and I say, hey, can I get a piece of candy? You're going to tell me there's nothing in the jar. And that's how we are as women. We can't give what's not in us. So we have to make sure that we're pouring into us so that we can give to others.
Very good.
Right.
Very good. President, you were going to say something?
No, I was going to say, as women, as people, we have to also realize that it is okay to take that cape off and sit down somewhere and just take a breath. And that's okay. We are, and you know what? We are super women. I mean, we are, but we also got to be that same superwoman to ourselves that we are to everyone that we try to help. That's the only way, and this is the way I trick my mind into thinking about it. That's the only way I can continue to help. Is if I am good to me, then I can be good to everybody else. And if not, it is exhausting.
It is.
It is exhausting.
It is. It is. Well, good. Well, thank you for this time today. I want to remind our viewers that the Dr. T series, or share with the viewers the Dr. T series, that they'll be able to take advantage of it through our Channel 19, through our radio station, 92.7. It'll also be on our various social media platforms. Because what we know is when one person is feeling that way, there are probably hundreds and thousands that are also feeling that way. And so the goal is certainly to educate, but to give people permission to be human, but to be responsible with their own mental health, their own wellness, and to take action. It is okay. We have great counseling services available here to our students. It's just a matter of making an appointment. And what I love, and I'm very transparent, I have gone to see Dr. Knighton on a couple different occasions, my family, because you sometimes just need that somewhat objective, that is professional, to kind of help you walk through this journey and this process. And then, of course, at times I just slip into that where my boss is my therapist sometimes too. I'm like, did you hear?
It goes both ways.
and she brings me back. But I am super excited about this collaboration. And regardless of the fact that the pandemic and the social unrest was a catalyst and ushered it in, we're going to take advantage of it and say thank you for that reason. So I'm excited about future collaborations and certainly about this Dr. T series. Ladies, thank you so much for your time today. Continue to be safe and well, and just making a huge difference. It's an honor to always be in your company, to learn from you, and to live by the example that you continue to provide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Viewers, thank you so much for joining me for this special edition of Realizing Potential. I'm Wendy Wilson, and I look forward to seeing you next time.